Hey, what's up everybody? Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged, joining you today to share some advice on getting ready for test day for those of you taking the LSAT in January and beyond. As you may know, LSAT is removing the logic game section of the LSAT and replacing it with a second scored logical reasoning section after the June 2024 LSAT. What this means is that you're not going to be seeing any more logic games experimental sections on the LSAT going forward, and in fact, they have not been testing out any logic games for quite some time. They don't need to because they're not going to be releasing new logic game sections on the LSAT going forward, and they have plenty of old ones in the bank to carry them through the next couple of LSAT test administrations until the change is made. What this means for you is that you should take this information into account when designing your LSAT practice tests simulating test day. You don't need to include a second unscored logic games as your experimental section because that's not what you're going to experience on test day. Rather, you should be taking some LSAT practice tests with 2 logical reasoning sections, 1 scored and 1 unscored, and other practice tests with 2 reading comp sections, 1 scored and 1 unscored. All of what I just said, of course, applying to the January, February, April, and June LSATs prior to the change. After the June 2024 LSAT, for those of you taking the LSAT in August or beyond, you may want to simulate tests with 3 logical reasoning sections, 2 scored logical reasonings, 1 unscored logical reasoning, and 1 reading comp, or alternatively, 2 scored logical reasoning sections, 1 scored reading comp, and 1 unscored reading comp, as if reading comp were going to be the unscored experimental section. But whatever you do, whenever you're taking the LSAT, no more unscored logic games experimental sections, because that is simply not what you are going to experience on LSAT test day. Now, of course, if you're applying to law school next cycle, you have a decision to make. Do you take the LSAT prior to the change with the logic game section, or after the change without the logic game section? One consideration you may want to think about is, do you want to open yourself up to the possibility of potentially having 3 logical reasoning sections back to back after they remove the logic game section starting August and beyond? Would you potentially want to have 2 logical reasoning sections that are scored along with 1 unscored logical reasoning section, potentially all 3 of those being consecutive? Or would you rather have a more varied LSAT experience with games, reasoning, and reading comp, and only one of those being doubled rather than potentially having logical reasoning being tripled? Logic games is the most learnable section of the LSAT, and so in my experience, a lot of students benefit from having it on the test, even if it seems to be the most difficult section at first. But that's beyond the scope of this video. Just wanted to give you some food for thought there. Ultimately, I want to keep the focus here on getting ready for LSAT test day. Whatever you decide, you're going to have 2 sections back to back, a 10-minute break, and 2 more sections back to back. That'll be the exam. 1 out of those 4 will be the unscored experimental section of either logical reasoning or reading comp, and you're not going to know which one it is during the exam. LSAT also is no longer disclosing or releasing LSAT test forms afterwards alongside your LSAT score report. They don't disclose those because they want to save those for potential reuse on upcoming LSAT exams. They have not been releasing LSAT exams along with your score ever since the beginning of that pandemic, when they moved the LSAT online, first with ProctorU, and now, of course, with Prometric. They have released a handful of LSAT practice tests in LSAC's Law Hub, PTs 90, 91, 92, 93, and even 94 most recently, but they don't do that alongside your LSAT score report. It's sporadic and random and could even happen months or even years later. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. I don't do any advertising for this channel. I rely only on word of mouth to help get the word out, and your sharing this video with another LSAT test taker really does make a difference. Maybe you know someone taking the LSAT in January or beyond who needs help figuring out how to simulate their LSAT practice tests, or needs to decide whether to take the LSAT before they remove the logic game section or after they remove the logic game section, and this video could help them achieve that top LSAT score. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.